collectively, I don't feel like we handle grief well. There's sort of this energy of like sweep it under the rug, stuff it down, zip it up because it makes other people uncomfortable. And that's something I felt like I took a stand against, that collective sort of way of handling grief. Like I was like, fuck that. You're going to see me cry. You're going to see me grieve because I lost my child, and that's important.
Today we're going to be talking about something that we don't often talk about, which is grief. How it shapes us, how it molds us, how it changes every cell in your body, and sometimes how it almost beautifully heals us. Hi, Bridge.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd love to ask you a question. What is a moment in your life that has changed everything for you?
I would have to say when I lost my daughter Ruby to stillbirth, it was just one of those moments where 1 second everything is great and beautiful and everything's golden, and like that you get the most devastating news, and also something that I never had ever even considered as a possibility, and all of a sudden nothing is okay.
I would love to know more about your daughter, Ruby, and tell me what it was like being pregnant with her.
That was a wild journey. In hindsight, there's a few little interesting things that happened, but I was super excited to have a second daughter. I have an older daughter, Lily, who is the light of my life. The reason why I named her Ruby Moon was it was this sort of this fluky thing with a blood moon eclipse. And I was like, oh, that's fun. So there's spiritual elements at play right off at the beginning. There was a lot of energy there, like right from the start. We were really excited, just happy, excited.
What was her energy like? I felt like every time I was pregnant with my daughters, I could always experience what their energy was like and kind of characteristics about them or the way that they would move or the way that they would be. I was just like, oh, they're going to be a thumb sucker. They're going to be this. Or what was her energy like?
She always had like this big, just bigness, right? There was a lot of signs, a lot of synchronicities, a lot of really interesting things coming through, and she just felt like a force.
You have this beautiful photo of you and Ruby. It's you in tears, and you're holding her, and she had brown hair. It's a beautiful, beautiful photo of the both of you. While that photo was being taken, what were the thoughts that you were thinking? The grief, how was it showing up for you?
Yeah, that was wild. And I'm actually happy to be talking about this because one of the things, and we've discussed this before about grief, is it's very isolating and you feel alone and you feel like, when something so unimaginably terrible happens, the tendency is for people to kind of turn a blind eye to it. And you have this feeling like my personal experience is painful for others to witness. You feel all alone with it. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. So I want that to be clear. It's something I don't shy away from talking about. I love talking about her, and people who have lost children, they will tell you the same thing, is they're very grateful for someone to mention them, to bring them up, to invite the conversation, and just to remember that they existed and have them hold space and to be in the world in some way still, even if it's just a memory. So I think in that moment, I was just in complete shock. It didn't seem real. I was definitely dissociating and kind of checked out. Like it felt like my soul was over here. And I was just kind of physically going through the motions at that point. And something that I also think a lot of people don't know about a late term, I had, a near full term stillbirth with Ruby, is that you still go through start to finish a full labor and delivery experience, except when the baby comes, they are passed away. And something that I think for me has been really important to speak on is just awareness around that. It was not something I had ever had awareness around, or I thought it was maybe something different, like something softer, in your mind, you think it's this, oh, they just went away kind of a thing. But really, in reality, I had this beautiful baby who was passed away, and she did have brown hair and it was curly. And it's just being in that moment and sharing that with my partner, who also, we went through that together. And I was grateful for him for being there. And we were both just really gutted by it. And I was as present with it as I could be because I knew it was going to be my only time with her. So in one moment, like kind of soaking it all in. And in the other, I was, like, get me out of here. All at the same time.
And Lily, your oldest, also was expecting.
Yes.
a sister, which makes
Yeah.
this experience even more complex
Yeah.
to have to explain that.
That was the hardest part. It's like I'm no stranger to heartache and heartbreak and dealing with things and having, some shitty hands dealt and moving through it. But having to navigate her experiencing grief and loss, that still to this day really unravels me. And I remember she was just there's so many spiritual, just the most beautiful spiritual experiences where Ruby's very present. She always shows up. She's very present. And Lily had that awareness really very early on. We didn't tell her anything. She didn't know what had happened. We had gone to the hospital and we just came back, and she was almost 3. So she didn't really understand anything. And as soon as we got back, she was kind of doing this thing with her hand, and she's like flying around, and she's like, whoa. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, it's baby Ruby. She's a firefly. She's a firebug. And I was like, floored, like one of those moments where your jaw just hits the floor and it's like, oh, she's flying around, she's a firebug. And I was like, she's here. And Lily was very aware of that, and she wasn't in any pain, right? My daughter didn't experience it as a painful thing, and that was really beautiful to witness as well. I had felt it like I was almost feeling this grief like for her, but she had acceptance of it right away, and she always felt her spirit. She always felt her presence. She talks about it all the time. And so I had to kind of allow her experience to be her experience and also navigate my own grief all at the same time.
I love that she was a firebug.
Little firebug.
Little firebug. I feel like with grief, it's one of those things that I don't think is spoken about enough. And it can happen in so many different ways, in so many different capacities with loss, whether it be loss of a child, loss of a loved one, for me, loss of a brother, loss of a parent, loss of versions of ourselves. Navigating grief is something that isn't spoken about. And I think that just as much as we talk about being well-resourced, that having the tools to navigate grief is something that is really beautiful to talk about. I once saw this interview where Andrew Garfield was talking about his mom who he had lost, and he sat there with tears in his eyes and he was saying, I think it's such a beautiful gift because it's just all this unexpressed love that has no place to go, and what a gift. I think from there, there's this point where we recognize that we're going through deep pain and our bodies go through so much when it comes to grief. How did you care for yourself initially after Ruby?
Yeah, in the beginning, I definitely felt like I was falling into the abyss. It's the best way I can describe it. It had this feeling of impending doom and just brokenness. I felt shattered, in a way that I didn't think I could recover from. And I felt myself sort of slipping into this darkness. And it was actually my daughter Lily who anchored me and brought me back, and every time I would look at her, it would sort of bring me back into my awareness, and I'd be like, she needs me. And I can't just completely fall off of this cliff. And I had to come back, and I had to come back into myself and into my heart and be a mom to her and be the mom that she deserved. I think through that process, it was sort of like a fake it till you make it thing. Like in the beginning, I was like, well, I'm just doing this for her. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other because she deserves it. And then eventually it was like, I'm going to heal because I deserve it too. It's definitely a game of survival and doing what you have to do to get through each moment. And eventually, you never stop grieving someone who you've loved and lost. But eventually you get better tools, and those tools are really tremendously important. And I think for me and the many, many people that I've worked with around grief and grieving is, number one, just you have to allow yourself to be a human having a human experience. You have to allow yourself to feel it. And grief is something where it demands to be witnessed, it demands to be felt, it demands to be expressed and experienced. And when you stuff it down and you run from it and you act like it's not there, that's when it becomes destructive. I think physically, energetically, emotionally, that's when it comes out sideways and it causes kind of issues. So I really, from very early on, and this made a lot of people uncomfortable. Collectively, I don't feel like we handle grief well. There's sort of this energy of sweep it under the rug, stuff it down, zip it up because it makes other people uncomfortable. And that's something I really I felt like I took a stand against that collective sort of way of handling grief. I was like, fuck that. you're going to see me cry. You're going to see me grieve because I lost my child, and that's important. And so I remember like walking around the grocery store, and it comes in waves. It hits you out of nowhere. Everybody, knows that experience where you're just walking, everything's fine, and you just get like ambushed. Little things, big things, little things, everything in between. And I refuse to choke it down. I refuse to stuff it. I refuse to fight back my own tears. Every single time I was like, I let it flow. And I think that that's very healing. I remember one time Lily, the double carts like at the grocery store where there's two of them, for a while afterwards, she would be on the one side, and like the one time I had put stuff on the other one, like next to her, and she'd be like, Mom, and she picked it up and she was like, baby Ruby's sitting there, and this was like one of the many times where she had her own spiritual connection with her, and she really witnessed her. I was like, okay, and of course I'm just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And I had this knee-jerk reaction to like, suck it up, right? Suck it up and be like, you're in the grocery store. People are going to see you. Like, what are they going to think? I remember being like, fuck that. I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry my tears. And I just walked around the grocery store with her and her little thing and baby Ruby in spirit form, like sitting next to her. And I just sobbed for like 45 minutes. And people stared at me, and surprisingly no one asked me if I was okay, which I thought was interesting, or offered any.
If I was there, I would have asked
You
you
would
if you
have,
were okay.
yeah. But I was just like, I got a lot of strange looks, and that's kind of been my MO this whole time, is like, let it flow, let it be what it is, let it move through and out, because when it's trapped inside, it's corrosive.
How do you still honor her?
Oh, all the time. Every time I talk about her, I sort of forcibly will insert it into situations, especially if I can tell someone's uncomfortable and they're like, want me to like shush it down. My knee jerk is almost like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about it. I share her picture. I only have that one picture. Actually, I have a few, but I only have that one picture of like me and her. And I share it. And I recognize that that's probably seems morbid to some people. And I'm like, I personally don't agree with that. I feel like this is my child. She existed. She was real. I feel like a responsibility towards bringing awareness to the many, 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 many people who've been through this, and it just suffered in silence and swept it under the rug and, sort of acted like they disappeared or whatever, And so it's like, see her. Witness her, experience her. I want to talk about her. I want to share these like kooky little things. I want to celebrate her birthday, which is the same as your birthday, which was like when we first started getting close and I put two and two together. That was like a huge sign. Like there's just so many signs and so many synchronicities along the way. But I'll share this story too. When I was pregnant, I was about 4 months pregnant with her, I had a psychic reading of sorts. And she specifically said that she was fiery and that she was Lily's protector. And I remember thinking that was so weird because Lily was going to be 3 and Ruby was going to be the baby sister. And I'm like, what's all this protector? Like, is she going to be like, but she did have like a fierce energy. And I was like, okay, yada, yada, whatever. In hindsight, that was one of those things that brought me a lot of peace was when, and her name as well. So I had named her Ruby Moon very early on based on the moon eclipse. And then when she ended up coming on July 29th, 2019, her birthstone is a ruby because she came in July, which she wasn't due until October. And she was a Leo because she was 7/29, which is in Leo season, which is fire, right? That's your sign too. It's a fire energy. And she became Lily's spiritual protector and her guardian angel. That was one of those things that I just like clung to. And I was like, I believe that this was the plan all along. And it gave me a tremendous amount of peace, just kind of surrendering to that and trusting the process. Yeah, it's been a journey.
And you've done such magical and incredible things in your life after this experience. And I think there's a lot of people who are navigating grief currently and existing right now in this moment who can't even imagine joy, who can't even imagine doing incredible things or having any sense of normalcy again. What would you say to someone who's navigating that?
Stay connected to your heart. Stay connected to the love. Like you had said, grief is love with nowhere to go, but it really does have a place to go. And I personally believe one of the reasons why I've been able to move through this, I don't want to use the word as well, but with whatever grace I've been able to move through it with, is because I've always stayed connected to her. I've always stayed connected to the love. And every time I feel that black hole coming back up, I connect back to the love. I can feel her and I know she's around me. And in some ways, my spiritual belief that she is here, that has helped me in the darkest times. And so always bring it back to the love. You know, I've even gotten to a place now where it's like, if I knew ahead of time, I would do the same thing all over again, because I'm just grateful that she was here for the amount of time that she was, and that I had the experience for, you know, the 7+ months of getting to love her and hold her and in my body, you know. And it's like you stick with that love long enough and it starts to sort itself out and it starts to make sense. And it's not just about loss, it's an opportunity to go deeper in the love as well.